Okay, we are back. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. I am joined today by Eden Morse. Eden is a sports dietitian. And Eden, where do you live again?
I live in Driggs, Idaho. I'm originally from
Okay.
Georgia. I went to college at Texas A&M, got my
Oh,
graduate
nice.
degree at Georgia State University, but I'm a Georgia girl. But I live in Driggs, Idaho. I lived in Jackson, Wyoming for 7 years before moving over here a year ago. So I'm still in the area, but if you were like talking about the greater area, like I'm on the backside of the Tetons in the Teton Valley area.
Okay. So definitely still getting the mountain exposure
I
I
live
know
on
you
the
do a lot of mountain
literally like my
biking.
backyard has the Tetons in it. Like I have like this incredible view and like yeah, like there's a bike trail 5 minutes from my house. Like I have great outdoor access here.
That's awesome. Yeah, I have some family up in Idaho and they're like, we step outside and we're just blown away. But for everyone watching this, today we're going to be talking about low energy availability and relative energy deficiency in sport. These are two concepts I think people who know me have seen me post about, but I haven't really talked about them in depth. And I figured I'd bring on Eden, who being a sports dietitian, this is her area of expertise. So we're just going to be talking about that for today. So Eden, what is low energy availability and REDS, LEA and REDS in your words?
So low energy availability is basically at the end of the day, after you've done all your activity, after you've eaten, your body doesn't have enough overall energy left over to function optimally. Like if I was just saying what that means, right? And that becomes a problem when it becomes systemic and like chronic to where you get this syndrome called relative energy deficiency in sport. And you don't need all of the signs and symptoms of REDS to have like issues. So for example, like I didn't have necessarily any GI issues when I was a college athlete, but I had period disturbances, like irregular periods. I had sleep disturbances. I had circulation problems. I had mood disturbances, chronic injuries, all this stuff. So basically when you're in this chronic state of not eating enough, and frankly in the fitness world that's what everybody wants, or like they want this calorie deficit every single
Yeah.
day, after a while it starts to take a toll on your body, and there's certain signs and symptoms that I feel like anybody who moves their body should be aware of.
So with Reds and LEA, I most people I think would see that, hear that, and think, okay, if I was a high level
Right.
marathoner or ultra marathoner or elite cyclist or swimmer, or I just do all these crazy endurance events, then that's something I need to think about. But if I'm just an average adult who's working out a couple times a week, going to the gym, maybe lifting weights, maybe hitting a bike ride here and there and going for maybe like a circuit, and I'm just active in general, but that doesn't really apply to me because I'm not training at that level. What's your response to that?
My response to that is not identifying as an athlete when you train multiple days per week could really hinder you because you're not actually using sports nutrition principles to make sure that your workouts are fueled and you're getting the most out of them. And I'd actually say that the population that is most at risk for low energy availability and relative energy deficiency in sport is the general population who doesn't identify as an athlete, even though they are training like athletes. Like if you're in the gym multiple days a week and then you're running or biking or doing anything, even just like leisurely, that's still enough to where you could be not fueling enough. And I always like to tell people, I thought the same thing. I was like, when I was in college, and I know I was a college softball player, and I was in college, but I didn't identify as an athlete because I'm like, well, I'm not a runner or I'm not a soccer player and I'm
Mm.
not an endurance athlete. So this doesn't apply to me. And it did, and I just didn't understand it at the time. But I said, like, anybody who moves their body regularly is an athlete to me and really can benefit from sports nutrition basics. And the people that aren't identifying with that and aren't recognizing that they could benefit from a pre-workout snack or a recovery shake and like, learning how to use performance plates to adjust off of their training volume. If they don't identify with that, they're probably missing a key part of nutrition, which can lead to low energy availability and potentially REDS.
So if you're active, you are considered in a way, the same principles apply for how your body is going to respond. You're moving, you're doing things, you're asking your body to do more than just whatever you were doing before. So you're adding in stuff on the movement side. So you need to add in stuff on the nutrition side as well, it sounds like.
Yeah, if you're asking your body to do more work, you have to give it energy to do the work. Nobody's really special in that to me. I mean, your heart is a muscle, your brain needs a constant drip of carbohydrates every single day, right? And then if you're moving more on top of that, then you have to adjust to that. And I even if somebody has body composition goals, I would say focusing on energy balance throughout the day, that consistent intake of meals and snacks to support what you're doing, that gets you closer to your goals versus just focusing on calories and calories out like we hear so much in the fitness spaces.
Yeah, I mean, that's what everyone says it boils down to, but every time I hear that, I go, "Yeah, but no, not really. There's a lot more than that. If it were that simple." Yeah, I just so with weight loss goals, I'm not a fan of it because I've seen it go down personally. I've seen this go down with friends, with family, with clients where they run themselves into the ground, focusing on trying to just cut everything out, beat themselves up in the gym, and it's like just burning the candle at both ends, and they just, either they get injured or they just hate training or just generally not a good time, and that's at best, right?
Mhm.
So, how does low energy availability play into someone that's sitting here thinking, "Well, I need to lose weight or I want to lose weight," and I would say I agree with this. How do you approach that conversation with somebody that's saying, like, coming to you saying, "I want to lose weight," and this doesn't apply to me?
Well, first of all, I mean, I would tell people like I'm not anti weight loss. I'm anti the pursuit of intentional weight loss at the detriment of your overall health. Right? That's different. But when somebody comes to me and they tell me what they want to lose weight, I think a better question to ask them is what do you think weight loss will give you?
Mm,
Because that gives me a clearer like idea of what their goals really are and I can support them in like health behaviors that get them close to what they really want without their weight really changing. And as you and I both know, with body composition changes, somebody can actually lose fat and gain muscle, and their weight might not change at all. So it only
yeah,
tells us one part of the story. But even with that, I mean, I will just tell you, like, as an athlete, an active person, I have a way better time in the gym and out on the trails when I'm not focused on body composition. I'm focused on how do I feel in my body, right? So if somebody comes to you and they're like, I just really want to lose weight, I would just get curious and ask more questions of what do you think it would give you? And are you willing to engage in behaviors that might get you closer to that, even if the scale doesn't change?
right. Yeah. Yeah, I feel like it almost it builds itself into a sustainable thing. Like this is just a normal that feels good versus I'm gonna do this short term miserable thing, and then when I'm done with it, I'll just be happy. And it's like,
Yeah. How has
but
that
will
ever
you?
worked for
Yeah.
anybody?
Yeah, like
Right.
how's that going? Yeah, or like if I get this, like you hear that with career or money, like if I just got that thing, then it would all be better. And you go, well, the sun doesn't set and people go into happily ever after. There's more after that. It keeps going, hopefully. Something that you can only do for the short term, I've always just seen it, it's
Yeah.
short-term fix, short-term
Another
solution.
question, I think another question to ask your clients too, and this is really, it just would give you a lot of information is like,
Sure.
is their goal actually athletics or is it aesthetics?
Yeah.
Is their
Yeah, I think it
goal actually, I
varies.
wanna have stronger bones, I want to have, stronger I just wanna maintain my muscle as I get older, or I want to look fit? And because I push back on, like, there is a big difference between being fit and looking fit, and those can be 2 different pursuits in the gym and how you train.
Mhm. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I know there are plenty of people that I've seen that look great in air quotes, right? But then if you had them do labs and look at their blood work, you go like, this person is really struggling. Or if you just talk to them and they're like, I hate this, I hate myself, they're just not in a good place physically or mentally. They might be dealing with chronic pain or just a ton of stress. And it's not something that honestly, I
Mhm.
don't think they're going to keep up long term. I just don't think it's healthy in a really holistic way. But the other thing that I've had people say to me is that, like, okay, maybe I do want to work on or try to improve my nutrition, but that sounds like a ton of work. That, I've always seen scales and these things, and I try to say, like, okay, it's more intuitive. And that's something that you've brought up in your own podcasts with intuitive eating. And I feel like for people hearing that, they think, well, if you have a certain amount of nutrition knowledge currently, like a baseline level of knowledge, that might be easier to do. But if you're still trying to get to a baseline knowledge, how do you get in with intuitive eating? Is that something that you
Yeah.
can do without that knowledge?
So what I like to do is I like to give people a structure getting started. Like I do show them what performance plates look like. There's a low intensity training plate, a moderate intensity training plate, and a high intensity training plate. Most of the people that you and I work with honestly need the low intensity and the moderate intensity. And so it gives them a structure of how to put a balanced plate together. And then I also like to give them the guidelines for pre, intra, and post workout nutrition. But I also challenge people, if you're curious what intuitive eating is, stop going by what you see on Instagram. Even don't I have a great podcast, but it's not the same thing as reading the book and actually
Right.
understanding the 10 principles, because what I find is most people, like, nutrition is pretty darn basic. It is. But getting through all of the noise in people's heads, the food rules they have, the environment they grew up in, that takes time to tease apart. And the intuitive eating is a set of 10 principles that is meant to increase interoceptive awareness with the body, the signs and signals
Mm,
from the body. Those can be physical, emotional, mental, etc. Right. And the last principle of intuitive eating is how to honor your health with gentle nutrition, the basics, right? But it's a lot of things that people know. But if I don't ever kind of dive deeper into somebody's relationship with food, any neutral piece of nutrition advice I give them could be applied like a diet.
yeah. Yeah,
I
that's
also,
true.
even just going to, like, the first principle of intuitive eating for anybody that's active, anybody you're training, anybody that's in the gym, the first principle is reject the diet mentality. And I like to tell them, let's flip that and say, adopt the fueling mentality. How can we add more to your day to where you get more out of your workouts and more out of your day? And I just really am a big fan of nutrition by addition versus subtraction, because in the world that we lived in, even for me as a college athlete, when I really went off the rails and honestly my eating disorder started to just take hold, it's when I was so focused on a lot of the things that we hear: eat clean, don't eat this. When I go to the restaurant, I can only get the safe thing or the healthy thing. And it just became too much and it became just so overwhelming. So, like you said, it feels like a lot of work. And I'm like, it is, because everybody's relationship with nutrition and their body is very different.
Mm,
But if you can dive deeper into that and unpack some of those rules and beliefs and change them or challenge them, nutrition becomes a lot easier because you're able to filter out all of the noise out there when it comes to nutrition and eat this, not that.
yeah, yeah, I feel like it's more of a it's work, but not in the sense of I'm having to do all this crazy prep that you see people doing online where they have scales and, like, I don't do
Yeah.
that. But
Mhm.
it's work in a different sense of how do I think about food? How am I engaging with the food environment that's around me? How do I feel with the food that I am eating, and how does that play into my life? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's very fair to say. And I mean, that's how I mean, oh gosh, there's this concept. It's in the intuitive eating book and it's called nutritionism. I actually can flip to it pretty quickly because my book
Sure.
is in front of me. But again, this is in the last concept, and it's about how, like, if you get so reductive with your approach, then you're missing the forest of the trees. And I know a lot of people say that, but I'm
Mm,
like, so nutritionism, it's a concept created by Georgie Skrinis, describes how the overly reductive focus on nutrients and food under how we think about food, how we view the experiences of our own bodies, and how we understand the relationship between food and our bodies. And on the other page, the next page, I highlighted, the more a person focuses on a number, the more it interferes with the process of listening to the body. And that is so backward, I feel like, when we think about fitness and we think about athletics, because it can be so metrics focused. But I feel like the athletes who are and active people who are really in tune with their bodies beyond numbers, who actually enjoy what they're doing, they perform better and they also just have a better relationship with their sport over time.
right. Yeah, it's the part of like on the exercise and training side of things where I've had clients, and I used to do this before I became a coach. It was like I need a percentage for this lift I'm about to hit, and if I don't use that, then it's not a good workout. And the more research you look at and the more time you spend training with different people, it's a lot more intuitive than that. Even high level athletes where they go, it's a real skill. It's almost an art in a sense of just getting in tune with yourself and finding that delicate balance of, okay, when am I going to do this versus that, and knowing when to change things if they're not working intuitively. Just yeah, it sounds like the same with the nutrition side of things as well. But yeah,
Mhm.
for anyone that doesn't know about this book, you've mentioned it a few times in your podcast. Could you hold up the
This is the intuitive eating book.
yeah.
I highly recommend it. I use the workbook with a lot of clients too. So if you're somebody who likes to write things down, I also feel like from a learning perspective, when we actually write things, we retain it better. So this is the workbook and I use it with clients all the time. But yeah, I mean, and I love to actually help athletes and active people understand how to use intuitive eating, because one of the things that you'll hear from sports dietitians is that, oh, it doesn't work for active people because we have to eat when we're not hungry. I'm like, that's addressed in the framework because there's different voices of hunger that we have to honor throughout the day. And as an active person, there are times when I eat on a mountain bike when I'm like, I'm not hungry. I really don't feel like it. But practically, I
Yeah.
know I need more energy. I need more carbs to keep going. So I'm going to eat this, you know, I was going to say like an Uncrustable, but I haven't actually found the Uncrustables here at my grocery store. I found like the Bobos, like peanut butter and
Okay.
jelly like sandwich things,
Yeah.
or like energy chews or whatever else. Like there's times when I honor my hunger, even though I'm like, I don't feel it physically. I'm not like, my stomach isn't growling. It's more like I have to keep going. But again, that's a sign and signal that I have learned. And like by eating more around my activities, even though I'm no longer competing, I think the biggest thing that I notice and is I'm just so much less sore than I ever
Mm.
was when I was in
Yeah.
college, like
Yeah.
under eating.
Yeah, I think that's one thing I want to lean into it for just a last question. So for anyone that's listening, that's going back to LEA and REDS, low energy availability, and they might be thinking, okay, well maybe this does apply to me. Like hopefully, I think it's
Mhm.
something that everyone listening to this will reflect on. But how do I know, outside of, we talked about amenorrhea, we talked about, like different things related to that. What are some other signs that this may or may not be something to consider as something that might be affecting you right now?
Yeah, I mean, if I go back to the signs and symptoms I started to notice the quickest, I mean, this is when I was in college, but still, like, I'm still a menstruating female. Like my period became irregular. It didn't leave completely. My cycles became actually a lot shorter. And some people, their cycles might get longer. So if you start to notice those disruptions in yourself, maybe talk to somebody about that. Maybe talk to your coach because I mean that would be actually a good thing for a personal trainer to have on an intake form. Tell me about your menstrual history. And for male athletes, I would actually, this is kind of sensitive, but discuss libido. Like the overall libido and if there's any changes in that. Another really subtle sign is actually not sleeping through the night. Like when people wake up at night hungry, that could be a sign they're
Okay.
not eating enough throughout the day. I see that with clients of all different kinds of activity levels and training levels. Um, Another thing too is if injuries are taking a long time to heal, if they're recurring, if they have a lot of, I would say like I had shin splints often, and I wasn't a runner. I tried to help you. I was not a runner, and I had a lot of foot
Wow.
problems, foot pain, hip
Yeah.
pain. Now, to be fair, I was a catcher. I was a softball catcher, but still, like, and then another big one that I see because you and I live in the West, circulation issues and
Huh.
LDL being really high. People are like, high? Yeah. I'm
Hmm.
like, yes, because what happens is if the body is not getting enough overall dietary fat and enough calories, then it actually signals to the body to start releasing cholesterol into the blood to be used for energy. That sounds good, but it's not. Like, you don't want that
Right.
to happen,
Yeah.
especially, chronically. So in college, if we go back to kind of how I looked, like my coach was like, "Yeah, you look good in the uniform." She actually said that to me at one point, but my blood work was all off. Like my cholesterol was high, I think my blood pressure was fine, but my heart rate started to trend down as well. So you'll
Oh,
notice like
wow.
if their blood pressure is low, their heart rate is low, their cholesterol is high, they get cold really easily, or they get numb, or they notice tingling in their extremities, those kinds of things, those are signs as well. So, and those are ones that I feel like people are less likely to pick up on, but that happens to a variety of people. I just saw actually a physical therapist here who's in her 30s, who frankly, like, I've noticed some things on social media, but I'm like, not my client, not my client, don't say anything. But she's like, why am I developing Raynaud's in my 30s? I'm like, I don't know. Actually, I do know, but I can't like again. And like that's something I still struggle with. I was telling people the two health consequences for myself that have not been 100% reversible from an eating disorder, from relative energy deficiency in sport. It's the bone health. Like I still my bone marrow density is better. It's actually normal, but the quality and like kind of the curvature of my bones has been impacted. And then also I haven't fully recovered from the circulatory damage. So I would ask really good questions about that one because a lot of people think, "Oh, I have a low heart rate, it just means I'm active." I'm like, "Potentially, but if it continues to trend down on top of your cholesterol going up, you actually don't
Mm.
have an athlete's heart, you have a starving heart."
Yeah. Yeah. Other things are going on. Yeah. Yeah, so it sounds like, okay, if one thing happens, it's like, okay, maybe something might be there, maybe not, and that, but if you see multiple things, it's like,
Yeah.
should
If they start to
probably,
tack on, yeah, it's not they're
yeah.
not isolated. They're usually that's where it's like it is a syndrome. And the more things you have in that syndrome, it's usually like you're not eating enough food.
Well, I think this is a good place to call it there. Are there any resources? We have the intuitive eating book, the workbook to go with it. Eden, you have a podcast called Pocket Snacks, which I love the name of. So I've
Actually, another
listened to it.
dietitian gave me that name, and I was like, "Thank you so much. I love that. It's just great
That's
because I'm like, yeah,
awesome.
I'm
Yeah.
always
So
like
if
that.
anyone wants a nutrition podcast, I highly recommend Pocket Snacks with Eden.
If if I had a sports nutrition book for people, like I have a Bible over here of sports nutrition information, but I got this from Lauren Link, who's now like the director of, oh gosh, I'm gonna get the name wrong, but it's like the American Association of Sports and Professional Dietitians, I'm pretty sure. Something like that.
Hmm.
But this it's basically like a spark notes of sports nutrition. And I feel like it answers a lot of questions that people have. And anybody, again, anybody who's moving their body could utilize the sports nutrition principles that are in this. It's just the basics, and it has those performance plates that I was talking about. It has questions about supplements. And I use it a lot with clients who aren't technically high level athletes, but I'm like, let's dumb it down a little bit. And yeah, but it's a really good book. It's called, I didn't say it out loud, Nutrient Timing: Fueling Strategies to Unlock Peak Performance by Lauren Lake.
Nice. I'll check that out. That sounds like a good read. Yeah, for me as a coach, I'm always like, I can give you some basic stuff, but if you want the good stuff, you got to go see a dietitian. And so, yeah, you're on my list of recommended contacts for anyone that's looking for somebody to work with if they have questions about this. So, Eden, thank you so much for your time. And if anyone's looking for your contact info, where can they find you? Is it social media is your preferred place for someone to reach out? Your website?
I spend too much time on social media, so it's fine if somebody
We
reaches
all
out
do.
to that. But like my handle on Instagram and TikTok is Garden of Eden _RD. And then I'd actually prefer an email like you did. You sent me an email. And it's Eden at tetonperformancenutrition.com.
Got it. Cool. I'll put it in the notes for this YouTube video, and then maybe we'll see if I can turn this into a full on podcast on the platforms. But awesome, Eden. Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.